Are you between the ages of 15 and 29?
Are you a person who wishes to develop your personal and professional skills?
Are you interested in entrepreneurship and volunteerism?
Do you want to learn about climate change in a post-COVID-19 era?
You answered yes to any of these questions, then this is your opportunity to be a part of the
NYPJ's Youth Development Seminar Series. 4 seminars will be conducted over a 2-week period in the month of August,
where we will engage in presentation geared towards
helping youth overcome.
Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, where more information will be shared.
We look forward to seeing you.
And as always, stay safe.
With my 2 hands in the air as far as I can.
All right, testing. Are you guys hearing me? Can someone just indicate if they're hearing me well, please? Hold on. Anybody? Somewhat? Wonderful, great. So guys, good morning. Well, now it's a good afternoon and welcome to the National Youth Parliament of Jamaica's Youth Development Seminar focused on climate change. I'm Najee Younes. I'm a youth parliamentarian for the parish of St. Thomas, and it is my honor to moderate today's sessions. I must start first by giving commendations to my lovely team who put this together. I must offer them thanks because without them, this would not have been possible. I must also thank our speakers today for coming to present to us on this a defining moment and defining issue of our time. I must also say hello to those of you who are watching on YouTube and watching on Facebook, because this is being streamed to all 3 platforms. We do thank you for joining us today. You would notice where I am today, guys. This would show you, yes, that we are, or rather, aujourd'hui, je suis allé à Paris, which today we are in Paris. And this, for those of you who have some knowledge on the topic, would know that this place is of great importance when we talk about the environment and climate change in reference to the Paris Agreement, which really is a landmark environmental accord that was adopted by nearly every single nation in 2015 to significantly address the negative impacts of climate change. And our speakers today are very versed on this an important area that is not only an academic issue for us, but our daily reality. We see the encroachment of our shores, we see the longer drought periods, and we see the shorter rain periods, and other things that would signify to us that we are living in paradoxical times and times that due to climate are being afflicted. And so today from our speakers, expect to be engaged, expect to be edified, and expect to be edutained as they take you through these 3 very important areas of climate change, talking about the role of youth in climate change and agriculture, and how you can limit your own carbon footprint. Before I get into our first musical item, we have some housekeeping to do. So let's get that on the way. So firstly, your microphones. I want to ask that if you are not speaking, you please deactivate your microphone, because we don't want any hindrances throughout the seminar to already prolong an already long seminar. Not very long, but if you keep interrupting, then of course this will be a problem. Continuing, for the question and answer session, after each presentation, we have a question and answer session. We're going to ask that you please use the raised hand feature so we can have some semblance of organization when we're going through the questions, so the presenters can answer them in a very sequential fashion. Continuing, the chat, guys, I want to please ask that you utilize the chat. We want to hear from you. Well, we want to hear from you literally as the presentation, well, in the question and answer session. But we'd love to hear from you as the presentation is ongoing. So if you have any questions, you can send them in the chat as well as to use the raise hand feature to type them there. And you can also engage your fellow peers and the presenters through the chat as well. So please feel free to use that. Also, at the end of our seminar today, we're going to have a poll for you to just give your general feedback on what your thoughts about the seminar was. So please stick with us so you can fill that out. Finally, we have a social media wall. What a social media wall is, essentially, it's a social media handle that collates all posts and text that uses a particular hashtag. So for the hashtag we're using for the Youth Development Seminar Series is hashtag helping youth overcome. So capital H, capital Y, capital O. So if you're listening to our seminars and listening to our presenters and something jumps out at you that you need to or you feel so moved and heartened to go and write down and to share with your social media circles, please do so and use our hashtag of helping youth overcome. That can be used on Twitter, and for Instagram, the social media wall only picks up posts, and I know that you guys may not be so inclined to actually post something to your pages, so you can go and comment under our very last post using that same hashtag helping youth overcome. At the end of the seminar, we'll select our favorite tweet on Twitter and we'll select our favorite comment on Instagram to receive a prize. So guys, please stay tuned for that. So without further ado, we should have our musical item now. Just trying to see if Mr. Mitchell, are you here? Dan Roy? All right, he's not here. Hopefully he will come in soon. But in the interim, we shall progress. I'm going to ask that Miss LaShawn Mills, she's a youth member of parliament, introduce our first speaker, which will be speaking on, or who will be speaking on rather, the role of youth in climate change. Ms. Mills?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I just want to say thank you guys for coming as well. So the speaker I'll be introducing today is Miss Terrelong. Miss Eleanor Terrelong is a Prime Minister Youth Awardee for environmental protection. She's dedicated to environmental advocacy and action through youth involvement in climate change. She's the founder and director of the Youth Climate Change Youth Council, formed in 2017, which is a youth volunteer group raising awareness about climate change among young Jamaicans. She has represented Jamaica as a youth climate change. She has represented Jamaica as a youth climate change and sustainability advocate in initiatives across the Caribbean region. Ms. Terrelong is currently pursuing a PhD in molecular biology at the UWI. She's also building a career as a scientist, communicator, and a writer. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Ms. Terrelong.
Hi, thank you, LaShawn. Thank you, everyone, for inviting me. Let me just share my screen. All right, so good afternoon, everyone. As mentioned, my name is Eleanor Terrelong. I'm the director of the Jamaica Climate Change Youth Council. Today, I'm going to be talking about the role of young people in combating climate change. We know it's election season for us here in Jamaica, and this is a time that we are looking at what our leaders have to say and making decisions about what we want our future to look like. And I think it's important for us as young people to remember the power that we have. So whatever cause it is that we put ourselves behind, whether it's climate change, whether it's human rights, no matter what it is, we have to remember that we as young people, we do have the power. We are the next generation. And we're the ones that have to carry through whatever solutions we want to see. We're the ones that have to shape our country. So that's just a little preamble. But I'm going to be talking about climate change specifically today. Every issue is a youth issue. And this was found in our Caribbean Youth Policy Review in 2017. Something that I say everywhere that I go is that we are the generation that must live climate change. So we're the generation that have to live when every day is getting hotter. We are the generation that's going to have to live through these big superstorms and hurricanes. We are the generation that's going to have to adapt to the new world that our parents and our grandparents and great grandparents would have created for us. And not only are we the ones that have to live in it, but if there's any solution to come, we're the ones that are going to have to push that solution forward. So about the Jamaica Climate Change Youth Council, just a little background. We are a youth-led volunteer organization. We're completely voluntary, and we're aimed at raising awareness about climate change among Jamaicans aged 15 to 37. We started in 2017, so we're about 3 years old. And we focus on three main things. We focus on raising awareness about climate change, advocating for climate policy and what we want our climate policy environment to look like, and making an impact on young people and within not just rural communities, within communities, but especially marginalized communities like the rural communities, poor people, and so on. Youth demographics in Jamaica, as I was saying, young people have the power. We make up 28% of Jamaica's population. So that is a good chunk. That is more than a quarter of the population just made up of young people. So clearly we have power. We have voting power. We have change making power. We have actionable power. And we are well placed to combat the adverse effects of climate change. This was even noted in our climate change policy framework that was written in 2015. Unfortunately, in the views of the National Youth Policy, youth have not been as visible in cultural and environmental causes, which are priority areas in Jamaica's sustainable development agenda. Now, this was written in 2017, and I would hope that that might have been the view at the time, but that is still not the view. But whether or not it is, we have to be the ones to make sure that we are visible in these issues. We have to make sure that people know that this is a priority for us. Why is a youth voice in climate action important? As I said, we're the generation that has to live climate change. And when you have activities that are designed for young people, led by young people, you're able to attract more young people to participate, because there's a difference as to when youth are invited to participate in an activity that has already been conceptualized by policymakers or leaders or NGOs. But there's a difference when you involve young people in the consultation process at every level. So from conceptualization of a project to execution of a project to monitoring it, all of that, there is power when we have ownership over whatever we are doing. That's why it's important for us to go out and touch more young people in more communities. Of course, we know how to bring home the message to other young people. We know the slang, we know the songs that are hot right now. We're on social media. So we're able to relate to our peers in a way that, the older generation isn't really able to connect with on that level. Now, when 2020 started, I think that we all had different expectations of what 2020 was going to be. We all had a very different idea of what sorts of challenges we were going to face. And I think COVID-19 really came and swept the whole world off our feet. And, now this is the new reality. It's very different from how we would imagine this year going. And I think that what COVID-19 has done is exposed all of the things that are wrong in our society. And the thing is that climate change has been doing the same thing. It has been exposing all of the things that are wrong in our society, but over a longer period of time. So what COVID-19 does is basically squash all of those issues together to exacerbate them. But we would have seen what would have happened over climate change. So it's basically a snapshot into what our future looks like under climate change. And this is because COVID-19 and climate change, they hit similar areas of society. So in our public health and safety systems, we're seeing gaps arising because of COVID-19. These are the same gaps that are going to arise when our public health is threatened by climate change. Environmental protection, we saw, how the earth sort of came back after COVID-19 when we stopped air travel and we reduced our emissions. So we can see what we were lacking, and we can see that if we do make a change, this is what the direct results of that are. Of course, it exposed gaps in our social and economic realities, our social safety net, how we help people who are now out of a job, how we touch the informal work sector. Food and water security, this is a big thing because we saw where if there is a pandemic or a sort of world event where we are on our own to sustain ourselves, to grow our own food, to provide water for our country, do we have the resources to be able to do that? Do we have the resources to be able to be sustainable as Jamaica without importing things like water? And food and water security are essential, not just in COVID-19, but especially for climate change when we're looking at our and I know Janelle is going to talk about agriculture in a little bit, but when we look at our agricultural sector and our fisheries sector, that is how we feed our people. And these are two of the hardest hit areas when it comes to climate change effects. Energy use, of course, I think that by now we should have been much further ahead in the renewable energy game. We could have been using it as an income earner for our country and also for our own clean energy activities. And of course, both COVID-19 and climate change and any other crisis, disaster, whether it's a hurricane, whether it's an earthquake, no matter what it is, it always directly impacts our vulnerable populations. It's always the poor people, it's always the rural communities that get the raw end of the deal. It's always our elderly or sick or disabled. Those are people that are forgotten. And I think that we have to keep in mind that if this is really Jamaica out of many one people, then we have to be thinking about all of our people and ensuring that whatever solutions we're trying to implement at maybe the top level, we have to ensure that it's directly affecting people in the communities on the ground. Okay, so all of that I say to say what we need to do as young people is really leverage our skills to attack each area of the crisis. And when it comes to crises, especially things like climate change that touch on so many different sectors of society, it's not just about a scientific response or it's not just about an environmental response. We need people skilled at all levels in all areas to contribute to whatever solution we're putting forward. So of course, we do need scientists and researchers because in whatever we're doing, we have to be guided by science. We also need people who can communicate this science and communicate information to everybody in a way that they can receive it and in a way that it actually inspires urgency within them to be able to create change. Of course, we need economists, policy analysts, writers, people to contribute to those types of discussions and ensure that climate change is a priority in any discussion we're having about economic growth. We need our engineers, our inventors to be working on new ideas, innovation. This is the opportunity for that. Of course, we're going to need social workers and human rights activists. We're going to be looking at the mental health effects of climate change. We're going to be looking at the community effects of climate change and all of those things. We have to keep everything in mind. We can't be looking at it in a vacuum. As I said, this is the time for innovation and entrepreneurship. We also have the opportunity for persons to be developing sustainability strategies. I think COVID-19 taught a lot of businesses that they have to revisit their business model to know if they'll be able to withstand sudden change, such as a pandemic or also a natural disaster and climate change. And I think it's going to be very important going forward that we have people doing sustainability planning, especially when it comes to business strategies and development strategies. Finally, the big one that I keep touching on here and there, because this is where it comes to life and death for us. For many people, climate change is not a life or death issue. For us in Jamaica, for developing states especially, it is. And disaster risk management is a big part of the climate response that I personally feel is lacking, and I personally feel it's lacking youth input. So as I said, we're going to be seeing more superstorms, quote unquote, larger hurricanes. We're going to be seeing worse droughts. We're going to be seeing much, increased flooding. And all of those things are going to need people to respond to and help the communities. We're going to need people to develop strategies to ensure that when these events happen, we don't lose as much as we could lose. And this is an area that I think we really need to increase youth input. We cannot solve a crisis without treating it as a crisis. And if solutions within the system are so impossible to find, then maybe we should change the system itself. That's a quote by Greta Thunberg, and I'm actually going to say it again because I don't feel like I said it properly the first time, and I really want us to think about it. We cannot solve a crisis without treating it as a crisis. And if solutions within the system are so impossible to find, then maybe we should change the system itself. So to close, I don't want to get political, but as I said, we are in uh, election season. And I just want to touch a little bit about our agency in change making. I think that as young people, this would be my first time voting. And for a lot of us, our generation, this would be our first or second time participating in the electoral process, if we choose to do so. And I think that it's just about we are now the generation that has the influence and the impact to be able to make a change and to shape the Jamaica that we want to see. And I think it's important that we recognize our agency as young people, because it's very easy to feel like, well, nobody now listens to the young people anyway, and I'm going to do what they want. And we have to involve ourselves in the process in different ways to ensure that our voices are heard. We have to participate in the political process. I will encourage everybody here who is eligible to vote. But if you don't want to vote, that is your choice. You can participate in the political process in other ways. You don't have to vote. And if you don't vote, it doesn't become a scenario where you're not allowed to criticize or you're not allowed to participate in other aspects of the process. As a citizen, you have the same rights as anybody else. But by going out and voting, you are directly contributing to who your next leader can be. Of course, we have to contribute to the development of solutions, and that's part of the political process, because it's easy to criticize the government, whichever government, and talk about what we would like to see them doing. But if we are not actively contributing to developing solutions that are feasible, given our current conditions, it doesn't make any sense. And finally, what we have to do, especially as young people, is to hold leaders accountable for our commitments. So if we're going out there to vote and we're risking our life in COVID to go and vote, then we also have to be the ones to hold our leaders accountable, ensure that whatever they commit to do, they will do, ensure that they make climate change a priority. So that's basically it from me. That's my 2 cents. Thank you so much for listening to me. If you want to join the council, you can follow us at our social media handles there. And I look forward to hearing your questions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Long. We really appreciate all that you've said. You've definitely shared a lot with us today. Guys, if you have any questions, please feel free to say them now. There must be something that you guys have heard that would have provoked something in your mind to say, hey, I want to talk about this a bit more. Feel free to type it in the chat as well. Come on, guys. We don't bite on Fridays. Every other day of the group, but not on Fridays. We're safe today. Okay, we have a question from Miss Mill. She says, how do you propose we hold officials accountable? What channels do you suggest to do so, and how?
All right. So first of all, we have to know what our officials are, what we're holding them accountable for, whether it is for example, their campaign promises or their election promises or whatever. If they come up with a climate plan or whatever it is when they get into office. There's actually something that I saw yesterday. I don't want to get into one side or the other, but I saw something yesterday that was andrometer.com, and what it does, it measures all of the environmental, when he would have run in 2016, it measures all of his promises, whether he kept them, broke them, whether they're in progress. So you can see them listed out by category, and you can actually see the environmental and climate change promises that he would have made and where we are in the pipeline. So I think, first of all, it's important for us to know what the promises are. It's important for us to know who is in charge of implementing this. And I think for us as young people, we have to get involved more in the process. We have to go out and talk to the literally, we're going to have to go out and immerse ourselves in it and learn for ourselves. We have to know which agencies are responsible for what, who is supposed to enact this policy, who is supposed to be in charge of environmental impact assessments, those sorts of things. So first of all, we have to educate ourselves to know what we are holding them accountable for. In terms of channels that we can use, I mean, there's always the option of going the public route. So you can write letters to the editor, if the next prime minister promises water to however many communities, it's up to us to say, okay, where are we? 2021, how many communities have water? 2022, you can do this through the media, you can do this through social media, you can do this through aspects on such as the Andrometer thing. That is one way to do it. Another way to do it, I don't want to this might be the last one. Another way that we can do it is actually following up with the agencies ourselves. And I think that what we, as the Jamaica Climate Change Youth Council, we're trying to develop what the best strategy is in order for our advocacy to be heard and to be taken seriously. So it's a tough question to ask because it depends on the actual issue, and we can get into that a little bit more. But crafting your advocacy so that the people that need to hear you is very important. And I think it is the political process also extends, because holding them accountable also means that if they've never address your problems this cycle, next cycle you vote them out. That's how it's supposed to work. So it's all as a part. There's a short-term way to hold them accountable, and then there's the long-term impact. And we also have to be what we have to do is set realistic expectations. Yes, we might want to have completely electric vehicles in Jamaica in 2025, but we also have to know what our situation is and know that we're in the middle of a pandemic, so we have to be realistic with our expectations. Once we are realistic with our expectations, then there can be no excuse why this wasn't done or that wasn't done. Yeah, that's it for me.
All right, thank you. Anybody else has any questions? Okay, I'm seeing another one here from Donrick Dixon. What is the name of the document that you mentioned earlier where one can see the party promises, whether they are fulfilled or not?
Okay, so it's not a document, it's actually a website, and I've put it in the chat. It's andrewmeter.com. And you can just go and you can search by category all of the things that he would have promised, and you can see what is done and what's not.
Okay.
Or you can also go back to the manifestos, as NIT said, yes.
All right. Anything else, guys? Feel free to ask your questions. You can unmute if you feel so moved. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody. Let me just give them a couple more seconds. You would have an opportunity like this in a very long time.
I'll also insert another thing. We have our leadership debate tomorrow, so I would encourage everyone on this call to submit a question to Jamaica Debates. You can do it on social media or you can email it, because we haven't seen enough of climate change in manifestos. I know this is not an election conversation, I'm sorry. But we haven't heard any questions about it in the debate. So, and I think it's important that it's at least heard on a national stage before we go to the polls, so we can have an idea of what we're voting for as it relates to climate policy. So I would just encourage anyone watching to submit a question. I figure if they have so many climate change questions, they must pick one for tomorrow night.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ms. Terrelong. We really, really do appreciate you coming here today, because I know you have somewhere else to run off to in short order. So we really are thankful for you taking out the time to. Oh, wait. One last question. We'll do this one and then you can go after. Ardeen Stewart says, as you, what are some of the ways we can plan on doing things better?
All right. So for us as the council, what we try to do is, first of all, some of that information, we try to build capacity. So some of the things that you would need to learn about the agencies and the laws and stuff, we try as a council to spread that information. And as I said, that's an important first step. And what that does is it equips people within their own community to be able to undertake tasks in their community, seek funds for projects that they want to do, that sort of thing. For us personally, we're working on projects. We're working on a project to create a sustainable community in St. Thomas. So basically the community will be solar powered, water will be rainwater harvesting. They'll be doing a recycling program. So they as a community will be a green community sort of based, living sustainably and being able to extend this into the future. What we want to do with that project is to just create an example of what can be and what a model for rural communities in the future can look like. On the advocacy side, as I said, we're crafting an advocacy plan earlier this year, and then COVID came, so we sort of had to retool and figure out, okay, given our current constraints, what is the best way to do our advocacy to ensure that we are heard? we're still crafting that strategy. I don't want to say that we've figured it all out yet, but we'd encourage you, Ardeen, to be a part of those discussions so that we can figure out exactly what is the way to make sure that we're not just making up noise for noise sake. We're doing it with an impact.
All right. Before you go though, Mr. Allen, could you just leave your contact information with anyone here or with possibly for those of persons here who'd want to join the Climate Change Youth Council that they can
Sure,
reach
I'll
out
put
to
it
you?
in the chat.
Great, please. Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Long, for again coming today. We really, really do appreciate it. This is a very important issue. And I define it as one of the defining issues of our time, because even though COVID-19 is still going along, climate change is still progressing and it's still moving on. So it is important that we recognize this and deal with it accordingly. So that is something that is of utmost importance. Thank you so, so, so much. Before we move on to our second presentation, we are going to have a musical item by our very own saxophonist, Mr. Dean Roy Mitchell. Mr. Mitchell, whenever you're ready. Just before he comes, while he readies himself, just reminding you all, please, guys, use the hashtag helping youth overcome so we can select a few, we can read a few, and we can kind of, select those that will be receiving prizes at the end of our seminar today. So it's hashtag helping youth overcome, capital H, capital Y, and capital O. I think Dean Roy is ready.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Okay, all right, so for your performance today, I will be doing a cover, right? A cover of the Lightning by Mortimer. Okay. All right, so yes, as I said, it's a cover, meaning I'll be playing along with the song. Okay.
Did I not tell you all he was talented? Thank you so much, Mr. Mitchell. We really, really do appreciate this as well for adding some levity and some musical talent to the discourse today. That is truly, truly appreciated. So without further ado, we are going to have our next presenter. According to the schedule, our next presenter should have been Ms. Janelle Tomlinson. However, she's having some problems logging in. So we're going to move on to our third presenter and then come back to our second presenter after. So Ms. Geddes, are you still here with us? I'm seeing you.
Wow. Yes, I am. However, all right. I told persons who wanted to hear me speak to log in at 1:45, but it's okay. That's fine. All right. So we can go ahead. Let me try and.
If you could just simply send a message now, that would be good.
All right. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Was there supposed to be, well, an introductory thing for me or?
Yes, we're going to, I was just making sure that you were there before I gave the introduction.
Okay.
Right. So we have introducing Miss Geddes, Mr. Siobhan Sutherland. Siobhan, you're here with us, right? I'm seeing you. Siobhan? Wonderful.
Yes, I am. Seeing me? Wonderful. Great. All right, so it's my pleasure to introduce our second speaker. So Jamila Geddes is a firm believer in Christ, mother to an amazing 6-year-old girl, a graduate of the University of the West Indies with a BSc in biochemistry and botany, executive assistant at the Center for Blue Economy and Innovation at the Caribbean Maritime University, member of the Climate Reality Corporation led by Al Gore, educator, runway model, and founding director of the View My World Photography Camp, an activity camp that teaches and focuses on the use of photography and other rudiments of technology to raise awareness and advocate for change in how we treat the environment. Her interests lie in the arts, medicine, volunteerism, and most recently, an avid interest in climate change, which granted her the opportunity in 2017 to represent Jamaica in forestry law and economic governance held in Beijing, China, and in 2018, accepted to train as a climate reality leader in Los Angeles, California. Her strong belief in the mantra, whatever is conceived will be achieved, has kept her to this day and proves strong in her achievements. My fellow youth advocates, help me welcome our presenter, Jamila Geddes.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, my friend. Siobhan and I go way back. So, you know, okay, so let me just get right on with it. Let me share the screen. Just a second. All right, just give me a second, please. I was caught off guard, so let me just get right back to the beginning of my slide. All right, now you're hearing me. Okay, so firstly, we're talking about limiting our carbon footprint. Now, carbon footprint is the quantity of carbon emitted by any activity done, usually in tons. First of all, are we seeing my screen? Can somebody indicate if we're seeing my screen?
Quite clearly.
Okay, great. All right, so carbon is emitted from the burning of fossil fuels, which accumulates in the atmosphere, which then traps heat if not absorbed or neutralized or sequestered, naturally creating climate change. Carbon footprint is one component of the ecological footprint defined as a measure of how fast the natural resources are consumed by humans in comparison to the natural regeneration of it. In other words, the amount of natural resources needed to support a population and an economy. Note well, though, that carbon footprint is currently 60% of humanity's ecological footprint. We will concentrate, however, on the issue, addressing the symptoms individually, but not independent of each other. It's also the most rapidly increasing component, increasing 11-fold since 1961. Therefore, its reduction is most essential. It is the most essential step to ending the demand on Earth's biocapacity and living within our means, basically. The issue / red light comes in when we use more natural resources and emit more carbon than the natural environment can regenerate, which is for our non-scientist persons, that's a biocapacity that I mentioned earlier. And the earth usually absorbs certain amounts. And if this is overcapacitated, then it will cause a problem. This results in an ecological deficit and is evident when we overfish, overdevelop or refuse, and not properly develop plans when we're having like housing developments, etc. Also, with the removal of natural resources without replacing it, such as, you know, cutting away of our forests, removing trees without replanting. Now, why should we reduce this carbon footprint? Here are the impacts. So the following are the results of an increased and excessive carbon emission on the environment. And this creates, as mentioned before, climate change, deforestation, food insecurity, species extinction. I was also depending on my fellow panelists to touch on the topic of agriculture, because that is a very important part. And if she had, you know, presented before, then you'd have a better understanding of what, you know, different aspects that I'll be speaking about on this. Now, let me get back to one. All right, so this slide clearly states, must we change? That is a very important question that each of us should ask ourselves. First of all, must we change? Yes, the scientific community and everyone should know that we should change. The world has been telling us for a long time that yes, we must change. Now, Mother Nature is telling us that we have to change. We are putting 152 million tons of man-made global warming pollution into the atmosphere every single day. And mind you, I'm speaking on a global perspective. We'll inch in on our Caribbean perspective as I go along as well, but we have to look at the bigger picture, and then we see where us as individuals can make a change. The population, especially, well, that pollution, especially carbon dioxide, it's building up and it's trapping heat. And we know how the greenhouse gas, you know, the greenhouse effect happens day by day. Here is the basic science of global warming. This has been understood by scientists since 1800s. Energy from the sun comes to Earth in the form of light. The energy is absorbed by the Earth and warms it. Some of that energy is re-radiated from the Earth in the form of heat. Some of that outgoing heat is trapped by the atmosphere, which is a good thing. It has kept our planet at a stable temperature. However, the danger comes in when all of that has been thickened. So the atmosphere is filled with all this heat trapped by pollution, and more heat energy is trapped, and it is warming our planet at an unprecedented rate. There are many sources of human-caused global warming, and you can browse on this picture. They pinpoint all the different areas that we cause global warming. So you have agricultural practices, forest burning, transportation, and many other factors, as can be seen in the picture. The main source, however, that can cause all of this is the rise in global temperatures, and seen today is the burning of fuels. And that's a major thing for us. We burn fossil fuels in many areas, and you can see that there as well. Fossil fuels will provide more than 80% of the world's energy. Fossil fuel use and emissions have gone up dramatically since World War II. In the last few years, there was a leveling off of the world adopted more and more clean energy. Pardon me. In the last few years, there was a leveling off as the world adopted more and more clean energy solutions until another spike in global warming pollution. So as you can see over the years, we had a leveling off in the 2000s up to, let me look here, up to 2019. And that has been because we have been conscious of different things and we have started to reduce our emissions. As a result of this pollution being trapped in the atmosphere, global temperatures have risen dramatically. Now, slide 12 gives you an understanding of 19 of the 20 hottest years on record, and that has occurred since 2001. The hottest year of all was 2016. I'm not sure if everybody remembers that year, but believe it or not, it was one of the hottest years. So there's a picture here. It explains, I'm sure you can understand what's happening here. There's a heat stroke, persons are being whisked off to the hospital. Well, a person is being whisked off to the hospital, and that's because of heat itself. It's a problem in many parts of the world and many parts of the country. Heat affects not only people, but animals, crops, and or weather. Now, on a global basis, more than 90% of all the extra heat energy trapped by our atmosphere is going into the oceans. This heat makes ocean-based storms like hurricanes, typhoons. We have not experienced typhoons, but as I said, this is on a global perspective, and we can inch into what we are affected by, such as hurricanes and all of that. Half of the increase in global ocean heat content has occurred in less than 20 years. Now, this slide shows a hurricane and its eye and everything. Now, we can relate to, well, some of us can relate to Hurricane Gilbert. That happened in 1986, I believe. I wasn't born yet, but and you have Hurricane Irma, Maria, Dorian, and most recently Laura. Laura has devastated Louisiana, as you can see in your on your news reports. All right, so this slide shows the hydrological cycle. I won't go too deep into that. This slide is actually showing a supercell storm with a column of rain at its center. And yes, that is something I really don't want to see. This is a slide on flooding in India. Now, sometimes people wonder how global warming can be blamed for causing more precipitation and flooding, and at the same time, more drought. Interesting to think about. Now, the extra heat trapped by rising levels of greenhouse gases actually leads to both. And as the climate changes, precipitation patterns also change, leaving some places with less rainfall than before. Higher temperatures also have a direct effect on the incidence and severity of wildfires. Here we see the number of large fires corresponds closely to the years with higher average spring and summer temperatures. Today, the fire season in the Western US is more than 100 days longer than in the 1970s. And I'm sure some of us would have seen in the hills, like in past years, a lot of bushfires and all of that. And that is also as a result of high temperatures in the summer and climate change. The number of climate-related extreme weather events has been going up worldwide, according to the insurance industry. The last 2 years rank among the top 10 the top 10 most expensive for overall disasters losses, with over 160 billion in losses in 2018 and 150 billion in 2019. So of course, climate change doesn't only cause disasters naturally, but it also causes a disaster economically. All right, so we should touch on the risk of high level sea, or the sea rising higher. They call it sea level rise. Okay, we are indeed very concerned about this because we as a Caribbean nation and Caribbean countries at large are at risk of this, and because of the melting caps in the northern hemisphere, it is very probable that this will happen in our very near future. And this sea level rise will be due to our low elevation coastal zones. So as I said, if we had presented before on agriculture, I'm guessing that this will be done a little later. Climate change does affect food processing and food security because it affects crop yield, and we all know and understand why. Infectious diseases now. That's another thing that we have to look at. Heat stress, air pollution, and waterborne diseases are all influenced by changing climates and not in our favor. Warmer temperatures have an impact on the spread of tropical diseases. Modern transportation and air travel play part, but the potential range for many diseases expands as regions farther and farther poleward get warmer. This means that there are more and more places where a disease like Zika can take root. And that's a picture of the Aedes aegypti that we are familiar with as well. All right, so we don't know what kind of frog this is. In Jamaica, you don't see these kind of frogs, but this speaks on extinction. So we've moved away from diseases. Now we're facing extinction because of climate change. And climate change, along with other factors such as ecosystem loss, is contributing to the world's worst extinction events since the extinction of the dinosaurs 65 million years ago, those who believe in dinosaurs. Moving on, the cost of carbon pollution, as we can see here, if we accumulate everything, we can see that the #1 threat to the global economy is climate change. So must we change? By now you should be convinced that yes, we must change. We must change our living practices. We must appeal to the masses. We must educate. We must, as my fellow panelists said before, try to make change by voting and ensuring that our leaders are held accountable for different things that would affect the climate and our living conditions. Now, the solutions, that's definitely important. The Earth is already struggling to support crippling effects of industrialization and eventually will no longer be able to support. So the onus is on us, however small, to individually lessen our carbon or footprint. Many Caribbean countries' per capita emissions are high, usually about 0.2 metric ton or 200 kilograms. That's approximately 440 pounds per person per year. To put into perspective, that's about the weight of 2 giant pandas. It may not be as much as other countries, but it is a significant contribution. For example, look at renewable energy. Wind energy was predicted to provide 30 gigawatts of electricity worldwide by 2010. As of 2019, we have exceeded that prediction by 22 times over. So this is definitely something to look at. The growth in wind energy being built around the world is an exponential curve. Wind energy could supply 40 times more electricity than the entire world currently uses. Solar energy is an even more dramatic story. 18 years ago, the best projection was that we would install 1 gigawatt of solar energy capacity per year by 2010. By 2010, we had exceeded that goal by 17 times. In 2019, we exceeded the goal by 121 times. And that is actually very positive. It means that we're doing something right. Even more dramatically than with wind, we see exponential growth in the amount of solar energy being installed around the world. And of course, we see where the cost of this installation is getting less and less by the year. So it's becoming more affordable, which is very good. Every hour, the Earth gets as much energy from the sun as we need to run the entire global economy for a year. If we can increase the fraction of this energy that we harvest and use, we can make a lot of progress towards solving the climate crisis and helping local economies at the same time. All right, here we see companies, auto manufacturers that are rolling with the punches and helping us to lessen our carbon footprint by providing electric vehicles. And here in Jamaica, it is said that, well, they're looking into having our JUTCs being run on electricity as well. So that is something very positive. So can we change? Yes, and I think we have answered that already. We have seen where we can and we must and we will. Now, the Paris Agreement. So let me give you a little backdrop of it, or backtrack on it. In December of 2015, at the Paris climate negotiations, every nation in the world agreed to phase down greenhouse gas pollution to net zero emissions as early in the second half of this century as possible. Climate action isn't just about what countries do. We all have to take the lead on climate. We're seeing corporations, states and provinces and the cities commit to reducing emissions. And I was researching and I noticed that 7 CARICOM countries or CARICOM members of states are also part of this agreement. Now, your individual action comes when you demand change from leaders. So in this picture, it doesn't show Jamaica, but it shows like, well, a march, a People's Climate March in Washington, DC in 2017. They were demanding changes at the ballots or at the polls. So how can we make our voices heard? How can we or I and us and all of us make our votes count? It's in our choices, and we should join together and speak out, vote, make that choice every day to fight climate crisis. And in closing, we as young people, we can also individually make a change. We can become a climate activist. We can become climate reality leader. We can join our local community environmental groups or school environmental clubs. We can start a project of our own, practice individually by reducing, reusing, and recycling. And this will be at least a tips in the bucket of helping to limit our carbon footprint. And that's my presentation for the time. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Ms. Geddes, for the truly edifying presentation. I know that I have learned a lot, and I am sure that the attendees can attest to the same. So guys, you know the drill. At the end of each presentation, we have a little question and answer session. I see some questions in the chat, and some persons have also private messaged me some questions, so we're going to go through those in a sec. But I'm going to read the one in the chat now for you, Ms. Geddes. It says, hold on. Oh, that's a new one. Okay, good stuff. All right. This one says, how can we bridge the gap between policy and action? How can we consolidate the needs of the market and the needs for environmental protection to drive sustainable development? Let me just say it one more time. How can we bridge the gap between policy and action? And how can we consolidate the needs of the market and the need for environmental protection to drive sustainable development? And that question is coming from Emmy Christie. And I must give commendations to Emmy. She's been quite engaging in the presentations thus far, and it is being noted. Thank you so much. So, Ms. Geddes.
All right, bridging the gap between policy and action. Yes, you hold your leaders accountable and you practice what you preach, you know. So individually, you make your little contributions, you educate, you start your own community development programs, you do all of that. And I mentioned it in the last part of the presentation, and you hold your leaders accountable. You go out and vote, you know, you listen to the presenters as they present whatever it is and hold them accountable of it. Let me see that other part. And how can we consolidate the needs of the market and the need for environmental protection to drive sustainable development? This part of it is, it's going to take some time because, of course, first of all, we had this thing where we reduced our plastic use. However, we're still seeing a lot more plastic on the market anyway. We have reduced the use of plastics for grocery shopping. We use boxes instead and everything, but then there is also other, you know, parts of it that we can definitely improve on. So it's a work in progress, and we have seen we actually see progress, we actually see positive impacts, but we still have a lot more work to do. Does that answer your question?
I think it answers our question. What she'll indicate in the chat. Thank you so much, Emmy. I move on to our next question, who comes from Miss Marlene Campbell. I'll break it up. Okay, it's a bit lengthy. What she says: what advice would you give to young people as it relates to them spreading awareness about climate change and educating the public? We'll do that one first.
Okay, what advice? Well, first of all, do your research. That's the first thing. Do your research. Join your local environmental clubs. Group up with like-minded persons. You know, that's very important. And as I mentioned before, there's also something that I had been part of in 2018. That's the Climate Reality Corps. I was actually selected to be part of that, and that has opened my mind and opened my, you know, the scope of everything to, well, of the awareness of the climate change crisis, right? If you need more information on that, I can share it with you later, so you can message me. I'll leave my email address right here. Let me just type it in right now, and you can state your interest, and I'll hook you up where that is concerned. Oh, I did that privately. I'll soon share it. Now, additionally, let me see the next part of the question. Additionally, how can we throughout our daily lives contribute to climate change mitigation and adaptation, or even projects, initiative we can participate in to ensure goal is achieved? Right, so that is also part of it. Be part of your community groups, educate yourself, and I'll definitely share more information on how you can join a group such as the Climate Reality Corps. Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Geddes.
You're welcome.
Another question, this one was private message to me. The Sustainable Development Goal number 13 speaks to taking urgent action to combating climate change and its impacts. One of the indicators speak to combating climate change and the greenhouse emissions of CO2 and other greenhouse gases. How far do you think Jamaica is in accomplishing this goal?
That's an interesting question. How far? It's hard to answer it in that terms. I think we have a long way to go, however, and basically I mentioned earlier in my presentation that we really don't contribute to it significantly like other countries. However, it is very important to us as a small island developing state that this is adhered to. So what we can do, hopefully our leaders, our Prime Minister last year was part of that, a group of persons internationally who spoke on this particular thing regarding global impact and climate change as well. So encouraging this kind of participation on the global scale and individually just doing what we can, reducing, reusing, recycling. That's how we can do it. And where it has to do with how far we are, we are a very long way away, but we are taking it in strides. That's the most I can say.
All right, just further a question personally. I know we have the Vision 2030 agenda, and we're now what is termed the decade of action, with only 10 years left to accomplishing or achieving the SDGs. Do you think that this can be done within the next 10 years for Vision 2030?
I'm going to remain positive and say yes. As long as we are serious about it, and our youth arm, I must make special commendations to our youth arm. We have been really doing our work. I am very proud of where our youth is in terms of this. And once we keep on that same track and probably increase momentum a little bit more, we can make an impact. Definitely.
All right, thank you. Another question. Siobhan Sutherland is asking, how does one calculate his or her own carbon footprint?
Okay, I should have put that on the screen. Let me just quickly Google it. I need to tell you, hold on. It's a quick calculation, calculating. I should have put that on the screen.
And just to further that discussion, what kind of carbon footprint is acceptable versus unacceptable? So we can have a very comprehensive and all-encompassing view of what carbon footprints are.
What carbon footprint is acceptable? No carbon footprint is really acceptable. Actually, it depends on how much of it, it depends on how much of it. First of all, let me answer the first question. So carbon footprint calculations are typically based on annual emissions. The personal one, however, you'd have to, I'm going to have to research that later, Siobhan, and let you know. All right. But remember that the carbon footprint is based on how much you personally use up, how much of the natural resources you use up every day or per annum. And then it depends on how well the earth or the natural resources can balance and rejuvenate in time.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else has any questions? Anybody, somebody? Guys, I promise you we don't bite on Fridays. So please feel free to ask questions. I know Miss Geddes personally, and I've never known her want to be abrasive. So go ahead and ask your questions. I know that climate change is a very, as I've said before, a defining issue of our time. And of course, knowing about our carbon footprints has an integral role to play in this matter. So you must have some questions that you have to ask. If you don't feel to ask them yourself, you can always, raise your hand or unmute yourselves. She has also left her email address in the chat, I believe. It is jamilageddes17@gmail.com. So you can always email her there and she'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Just giving you guys a few more seconds before we move on.
Okay, let me just quickly say, I'm not seeing a calculation for your personal one, but if you want to figure it out on, well, country to country, there is this thing on Google or this website, carbonfootprint.com. You can go there and you can select your country. They will calculate it there for you. It's self-explanatory. You can visit there and see what it is.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Geddes. We really do appreciate that. And we, again, the entire National Youth Parliament salutes you as well as our other presenters or presenter who have come before you to speak on these very important topics.
You're welcome.
The third presenter, Miss Janelle Tomlinson, was communicating with her during Ms. Geddes' presentation. Unfortunately, she will not be able to come. She's having some internet connectivity issues and consequently is unable to log into the meeting. However, she has assured me that in the future, she will be more than happy to arrange for another session to focus on climate change agriculture. So on behalf of the entire NYPJ, the Surrey County, and of course the Youth Development Seminar Series Committee, I must wholeheartedly apologize on her behalf for this, because we know that this is something that you are definitely looking out for. So without further ado, I'm going to move on to closing the Youth Development Seminar Series 2020. It has been a long ride. It has been a long ride. For those of you who've been working with me behind the scenes, you'd have known the hours and everything that we've put into this, and just sending out emails and getting persons to sign up and changing methodologies midway, and even planning is, is much different from actually executing something. So of course, that's something that we had to discover and to work through. But yet here we are 4 seminars later, impacting many lives, and many persons have reached out to us saying, they really appreciate it. They've learned so much. They're really happy that we're doing this. And it's all in effort of furthering our unending commitment to helping youth overcome, which, as you guys should know, is the theme for the Youth Development Seminar Series of the National Youth Parliament. So in closing, I'm going to now invite Mr. David Salmon. He is the Surrey County Coordinator, to offer his remarks.
Hello, good evening or good afternoon. Is everyone hearing me?
Loud and clear.
Perfect. Good afternoon, everyone. And I'd like to thank you all for attending our first ever NYPJ Surrey Seminar Series. 4 sessions, 2 weeks. It has been a long ride, as Najee has explained, but we have persisted, and the excellence that is demonstrated in this session is indicative of that. We started having a very good session last week, Monday, when we had personal and professional development. This was followed with volunteerism, entrepreneurship, and for today, climate change. We at the National Youth Parliament believe in wholesome student development. That is why we took the initiative to host this seminar series. The National Youth Parliament is committed to helping youth overcome, especially in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. We will continue to execute this journey, and we thank you for your help and support. Over the past 2 weeks, over 275 young persons were able to participate and attend these sessions. This shows the impact that we have made, and it shows the long-term vision that the youth of this nation have. Now, as you go to your respective activities and your respective youth groups, I implore you all to be excellent, be disciplined, be decisive, be determined, and most of all, use the knowledge that you have gained from these sessions to change the world. I believe in you. The Youth Parliament believes in you. We all believe in you. God bless you, and have a very good afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Salmon. I don't know about you guys, but I feel very heartened. I feel very inspired to go out and to utilize the knowledge that we would have garnered over the duration of this seminar series to go there and thrive in a post-COVID-19 era. And to challenge us to do just that, we have Ms. Annabelle Jones representing the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, as well as the Youth Advisory Council of Jamaica.
Good afternoon, participants, guest speakers, and the hardworking members of the National Youth Development Seminar Series team from the Surrey County of the National Youth Parliament of Jamaica 2019 to 2020 cohort. On behalf of the Youth Advisory Council of Jamaica, which is the steering committee of the National Youth Parliament, the Youth and Adolescent Policy Division within the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, I thank the guest speakers for your informative and relevant presentations, which I'm sure has imparted a vast amount of knowledge to each participant in this seminar. And I strongly believe no participant has left here the same. Participants, I thank you for your dedication and enthusiasm in attending these seminars. I encourage you all to reflect on the information and utilize it in your daily lives. as we try to come to grips with our new reality, which is COVID-19. I strongly believe that the skills learned in this series will propel you further into your purpose as we shift into post-COVID-19 recovery mode. I urge each young person here to use the knowledge gained to make a difference in our society as Jamaica continues to pursue its developmental objectives in changing times. Lastly, I wholeheartedly want to thank the NYPJ SORRY team that has worked assiduously to ensure this seminar is a success and that during this time, the Youth and Adolescent Policy Division's youth development objectives are achieved. Once again, thank you all so much for attending. God bless you all.
Thank you so much, Ms. Annabelle. And before I proceed, I must give commendations to David and to Annabelle because this could not have been accomplished had it not been for their involvement. And we're truly indebted to them. And all of the participants and attendees are indebted to them because without their guidance, without their wisdom, without their support, this definitely could not have come to fruition. So thank you both so much. It has been a long 2 weeks. Our first seminar focused on personal and professional development. We moved on to volunteerism. We then on Monday spoke about entrepreneurship. And here we are today, ending the seminar series with climate change. These are 4 ways in which we realize that young people can go out there and make the changes and thrive in a post-COVID-19 era. And because of that, the NYPJ and more specifically the Surrey County decided that we're going to have this seminar series to go out and help youth impact change. And so, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I'm going to see if we can launch the poll. Siobhan, is the poll launched just yet?
Challenge.
Not able to launch. Okay, we'll have, all right, what we're going to do is simply when we send you the thank you email, we're going to send you the poll within that email. So guys, also, that's a good thing I brought that up. Expect a little surprise in your email this evening into tomorrow morning. We'll be sending all our participants something very special in their emails in the coming hours. Again, on behalf of the entire National Youth Parliament of Jamaica, the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, and the Youth Advisory Council of Jamaica, it is my honor to close the Youth Development Seminar Series under the theme of helping youth overcome. It was my pleasure today to moderate the services, and I really hope that you've learned something that will help to change your life going forward as we live through COVID-19. My name is Najee Nunes, and it was my pleasure today to moderate the services. Please have a wonderful end of the week.
Can't ball in a life, man. Go on with it, go on with it.
Yo, easy. Are you kidding me?
To us, yeah. So we are coming in with a force, yeah. Blessings we are reap and we coursing on full. Oh, we not rise and boast. Yeah, we give thanks like we need it the most. We have to give thanks like we really supposed to be thankful. Blessings all for my life and my thank God for the journey, the earnings are just for the plus. Yeah, and gratitude is a must. Yeah, me see blessings fall by my right hand. But I toast for the friends we take off every load. One time did sit down in a class and we poured that only said the road and me go on with the road. Third form, me say me try a thing, and you know it formed up to be a fire thing. Now up on stage with chronics, I sing, yeah, see me all diggy soon, get the higher ring like hello, brother. You say I had to shot ya, saw your poster, spectacular photo. Keep it burning, yes, that's the motto. If me the butter pass through your shot, to can't ball in a life, man. Me have to thank God for the journey, the earnings are just for the plus. Yeah, and gratitude is a must. Yeah, me see blessings fall by my right hand. But I toast to the friends we take off every load. One time did sit down in a class and we poured that only said the road and me go on with it, go on with it. That's how our blessings upon me. And send me to tell them my story. That's how our blessings upon me. And that's how I made to give him the glory. I'm delighted. Jano say my passion ignited. Got the music get me excited. I'm coming like a potion. Blessings all for my life and my thank God for the journey, the earnings are just for the plus. Yeah, and gratitude is a must. Yeah, me say blessings fall by my right hand. Bust a toast for the friends we take off every load. One time did sit down in a class and we bored. Then all said the road and me go on with the road. Toast, yeah, yeah, yeah. Toast. Oh, in a rise and boast. Yeah, we give thanks. We have to give thanks like we really supposed to be thankful. Blessings all for my life and my thank God for the journey, the earnings are just for the plus. Yeah, and gratitude is a must. Yeah, me see blessings fall by my right hand. Bust a toast for the friends we take off every load one time.